Troubles flaring again in the restive Balkans in Central Europe. This time, more than 20 people have been killed in a shootout between police and an armed gang in Macedonia. It's complicated, but let's explain to you where this is all taking place. The incident itself took place here in the north of Macedonia. It's a district that's inhabited by mostly ethnic Albanians. They make up a quarter of Macedonia's population. Albania itself is across the border. People there reacted to the deadly clashes with protests outside the Macedonian embassy. The demonstrators accused Macedonia of using violence instead of dialogue when dealing with ethnic Albanians. But the Macedonian authorities say the gunmen were plotting terrorism against government institutions and civilian targets. And they're putting the blame squarely on Albanians living further north in Kosovo. Last month, a group of Kosovan Albanians briefly took over a police station in Macedonia, demanding their own breakaway state there. Paula Sleer reports now on what's making people in Kosovo prone to radical ideas.
3 out of 5 young people in Kosovo are unemployed, and for a country that has the youngest population in Europe, more than 50% of this country is under the age of 30. Those figures are startling. We at the University of Pristina to gauge the mood.
Not very much opportunities, but we have to work on it as a state and as people, so step by step we will do better.
Staggering unemployment rates have brought the economy almost to a standstill. And with no prospects of European integration in sight and a lack of international investors, a sense of hopelessness dominates the air.
I have already graduated. I have finished my studies. I'm unemployed. I don't have a job and I'm looking for a job right now. But at the moment, I have no idea if my future will be here.
And in such a state of vulnerability, extremist organizations enter the scene with promises of wealth, adventure and a better life. A new study by the Kosovo Center for Security Studies has found that at least 232 Kosovo nationals have already joined the ranks of extremist organizations in Iraq and Syria, an alarming figure for a population that barely numbers 2 million.
Wherever you find high unemployment, significant high unemployment, you're going to find a breeding ground for this type of activity.
After decades of war, Kosovo now finds itself in the crosshairs of radical ideologies and foreign wars beyond its borders and interests.
Feeling disenfranchised from the community or the society that they're in, feeling that they have no place and they have no future. That's what drives people to pick up arms against their brothers or other people.
There is no reason for us to go to foreign lands and fight foreign wars.
But it's getting that message outside of these lecture halls that could prove the most difficult lesson yet. Paula Sleer, RT, Kosovo.
Yemen's former president, Abdullah Saleh, has formally announced an alliance with the rebels. The Houthis have been supported by forces still loyal to Saleh, who was ousted 3 years ago after a popular uprising. It comes after the Saudi-led coalition bombed his home in the capital, Sana'a. The UN's top relief official has accused the Saudi-led coalition of violating international humanitarian law by indiscriminately bombing residential areas in Yemen. Also, Iyad Nasser, who's from the UN Office for the Middle East and North Africa, says those behind the airstrikes should be held responsible.
Any indiscriminate attacks against areas where civilians are located, bombardments, shelling, acts of hostilities, not targeting precisely military objects, they are considered in violation of IHL. When the time comes and the United Nations or the Security Council, they will look into the violations. Any party to the conflict that has committed violations of IHL should and has to be held responsible.
Amid the destruction caused by the airstrikes, locals in Sana'a are doing their best to go about their daily lives. Yemen-based journalist Mohammed Al-Attab talked to some of them.
Because of the fuel shortage, people here are trying to find different alternatives to continue their works.
It is not as good, but it has enabled us to keep up our work amid severe shortages of diesel and other fuels. It has affected everyone. It has paralyzed public life, but we have to provide for our families and work with whatever we have as long as we are alive.
We used to run our heating system on diesel, but due to the fuel shortage and the rising price of firewood, we started using discarded motor oil as fuel for the heating system. For the moment, that is the best solution for us to keep our family going and get through this crisis.
Here we are in the old city of Sana'a. This is one of the old shops for grinding oil and cereals. We would like to talk about how they are finding this as a best alternative for the people.
We have brought back a traditional grinding method using a camel. It goes back a long way to Yemen's oldest civilizations. And now the skills of our ancestors have become useful again despite modern technology. In the store we also sell various oil-based products. We supply families and mosques with lighting oil. We are self-sufficient and can survive any product bans.
That report from Yemen-based journalist Mohammed Al-Attab, who was talking to some of the locals living in Sana'a. Now, Edward Snowden may have plenty of enemies, but he also has some very loyal admirers too. One of them has come up with an unusual way to honour him by creating a sculpture of his beloved whistleblower, which is 3D printable. You can find out how to get your own Snowden bust at RT.com. And while you're there, meet the Belgian warfare enthusiast who's built an intricate scale model of the Battle of Waterloo. It's 40 square metres, and his creation took him some 40 years to complete. We've got some great pictures of his work on our website. Now, we've all been caught out without enough money in our pockets, but worrying about having cash on you is becoming less of a problem in Denmark, which is a step closer to becoming the world's first e-economy. The Danish government's proposing that certain businesses, including petrol stations, restaurants and clothes retailers, should no longer be legally required to accept cash. It's the latest move away from coins and notes there. A third of Danes already use a mobile payment app on their smartphones when they're making their transactions. Neighbouring Sweden, too, is also heading the cash-free way. Statistics there show that 4 out of 5 purchases are made using debit cards.
It seems like Denmark, Sweden, they're on the right track. There's a large percentage of the population using electronic money. We will be going that way everywhere sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. So I think this is a great first step, and it all sort of comes down to, I guess, getting users on board, getting people familiar with using that sort of form of currency, and I guess also getting businesses on board so people can actually use the currency. And it seems like Denmark is on the right track here.
And let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of getting rid of cash completely. Some, of course, feel safer having actual notes and coins in their pockets. But cash can also be forged, as we know, and used more easily for illegal purposes. Going cashless means that you don't have to carry any money around, and electronic payments can be traced and verified. On the downside, though, they are also at risk from ever more sophisticated cybercriminals.
From late 2013 onwards, several banks and financial institutions have been attacked by an unknown group of cybercriminals. This could result in cumulative losses of up to $1 billion. The motivation for the attackers appears to be financial gain.
IT specialist Robert Steele says moving to electronic payment systems does not offer absolute protection against fraudsters.
Most systems today are very corrupt. They have old legacy code. They have not been written with open source security from the beginning. So frankly, I wouldn't trust most systems. Part of the problem is that banks make so much money that they've been able to afford the cost of hidden corruption.
Moscow's spectacular Victory Day parade on Saturday to mark the 70th anniversary of the defeat of Nazism was boycotted by Western leaders. But lots of foreign veterans, despite their old age and the long flight to get there, made the effort to attend. In today's Going Underground on RT International, Afshin Ratanzi catches up with one World War II veteran to ask why it was so important to mark the occasion.
You saw the Chinese and Indian leaders in Moscow. There was a snub from Washington, from London. Tell me about what you thought about how VE Day, 70 years ago, has been commemorated, celebrated.
Well, first of all, I have to say this from the bottom of my heart, that if the Russian people had not fought the way they had, I've always admired their love of country, which I don't know of another country which has that deep feeling for their earth, their land. If they hadn't have fought the way they had, the Second World War would not have finished in 1945. It would have gone on for at least another year.
A teenager has been shot dead and 3 wounded at an annual motorcycle event in the US city of Newark. The shooting took place in the evening at a ceremony marking the beginning of the riding season. Police believe a number of gunmen riding motorcycles or quad bikes were involved. The shooting is the 29th homicide in Newark this year. The Turkish president's visit to Germany has been overshadowed by street clashes. Thousands of President Erdogan's supporters tried to enter a stadium where he was giving a speech, but they were forced back by a group of activists protesting against his visit. Germany is home to over 4 million ethnic Turks, more than 1 million of whom are eligible to vote in Turkey's upcoming election. Riots broke out in northwest Mexico, where hundreds of farm workers turned out to accuse local police of a violent repression. The labourers have spent months demanding higher wages and better working conditions. They were preparing a boycott when police allegedly entered some of their homes without permission and assaulted men, women and children. Around 70 people were then injured in the riots which followed. Just a reminder of our breaking news this hour. That's of the Turkish cargo ship, which came under shelling while passing near the North Libyan city of Tobruk. According to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, the vessel was attacked twice, first from the shore and then from the air. One of the ship's officers has been killed and several crew members injured. Officials don't yet know who's behind that attack. We'll, of course, bring you more details on that in just over half an hour. Up next on RT International, the stories of 4 men who uncovered violations of the US Constitution by state security services.